All right. Thank you all for coming and welcome to my final product of my Global Scholars Diploma. This is the third year project for students who are a part of this program through the Columbus Council on World Affairs. Students are required to choose a global issue that we will tackle in our local community. And for my project, I decided to address the importance of diversity in local music education programs. So to get us started, I wanted to propose a question. Think of a significant time where you experienced a culturally diverse musical performance and what stands out about it. This can look a lot of different ways, and to help give some examples, I was hoping a few people would be willing to share, but while you're thinking, I will share mine. This is a photo of me. I was about 3 years old with Will Gray, a musician and family friend, and his wife, Angie, who Will passed away a couple of years ago to cancer, and in his career produced 2 albums as well as a documentary that followed him through the process of creating his first album. This documentary spotlighted the struggle up-and-coming artists face in the production world. When Will came to perform a show in Mount Vernon, he asked me to sing on stage with him for probably 3 words, but this song, Back to the Wall, includes rap and hip hop. Anyone who knows me can tell you that first, I'm not a singer, I'm an instrumentalist. And I'm not the type typically to jump up on stage and join anyone with any song. However, something about the song and Will's personality possessed me to jump outside of my comfort zone, even as probably a 3 or 4-year-old. Will's music was very different than the music that my parents played for me, which probably was like folk and bluegrass. As I was preparing for this presentation, I stepped back to examine my own musical tastes and to evaluate many connections between Will's music and my music taste currently. I'm not saying that my brief moment of fame was directly influenced by what I listened to today, but Will's music was certainly the first time I had exposure to any diverse sounds in the music I listen to now, and I'm very thankful for the ways in which I'm reminded of this moment even now, like 13 years later. Would anyone like to share a moment where they experienced an experience like that? And if not, that is also okay.
Erin Wiley has a comment.
Oh. Well, one time we were in Australia and we heard a man play the didgeridoo, an Indigenous man play the didgeridoo with the Australian symphony. So that was a diverse musical experience for us.
Very cool. Thank you.
Well, I'm willing to share if that's okay. Last weekend, I was at a choral directors conference and I was able to hear Jason Max Ferdinand singers who are choral professional musicians from all over the country, and they happen to all be African American. And I heard many different types of choral music that I've never heard before, all the way from spirituals to some modern things that have been written by African American composers, and it was a pretty amazing experience for me to be part of.
Yes, thank you. Anybody else? All right. So as I started to piece together this project, I was first very much inspired by a post that I saw on the Vanderbilt University Blair School of Music Instagram page. And it was a post basically outlining this project that is listed on here by Thomas Verrier, which was Banding Together Initiative. This project basically was Thomas taking students abroad to Colombia, and although this is on a much larger scale than obviously what I can do as a senior in high school, I realized that this is very much what I kind of wanted to embody with my project. So in my interview, we discussed the immense impact that it had on not only the students who they were helping on the trip, but the students who took the trip as well. So this next slide is going to include a clip of the interview, and I need to switch the audio.
primarily. First, when we do these kinds of projects, we're playing music of other cultures. So through the experience of playing in the ensemble, the participants are having the opportunity to touch a different culture through their music, and not only through their music, but playing side by people whose music it is there. So when you play Colombian music with American students, they certainly relate to Colombia, but there's a whole different experience when they play Colombian music with Colombians. Mm-hmm. And so it's an opportunity to share and get firsthand experiences with people from the culture from which the music is. But the other thing is just the common denominator that music creates. I mean, music is the common denominator. There are 12 pitches and 11 intervals in every style of music. And in the medium of band, there are 9 different instruments in every band, and whether you're playing in a concert band in the United States or whatever country you're in, it's the same instruments. So while there's a commonality of the vehicle, of the medium that we're experiencing, but then there's the variety of what we're doing with that medium. And I think that's what's so special about these projects.
So after talking with both Thomas and Maria Mendonça, whose interview we will touch on later, I came up with the idea that music can build bridges, and this idea is certainly supported by his words here. Not only did the Colombian students feel represented musically through this experience, but the Vanderbilt students who were able to gain a more authentic understanding of the culture by playing directly with them. So one important question to clarify as we enter this presentation is, what exactly does it mean to diversify music education? The definition that I put together, the top one, reads, in order to fully encapsulate the diverse realm that is music, it is important for students to see themselves represented in the content they encounter and experience. The ideas that were pulled in here will be further elaborated upon later, but we've already seen this concept in action from Verrier's words. The definition included at the bottom was pulled from the National Association for Music Education. It is about building a curriculum that enables students to experience, discuss, and perform music that is culturally and socially relevant. Additionally, the chance to sing, play, and listen to the music of other cultures creates an understanding that transcends personal experience and creates a more global perspective. The article these words originated in, entitled "Why Music Education Needs to Incorporate More Diversity," discusses the importance of representation for students in both the content and the music they are being taught. Students can develop a sense of isolation if their cultural identities are not addressed, and especially if there's a bias against their communities present in the classroom. This chart is a representation of the ethnic backgrounds of almost 30,000 music school graduates in 2011. The data was pulled from the Integrated Post-Secondary Data System. If the percentages were converted into numbers, the 83% that's made up by white students equates to around 24,200 students. This is the highest, the second highest being the 7% made up by Hispanics or Latino students, and that is equal to around 2,000. While historically Black colleges and universities and Hispanic serving institutions are only contributed to about 5% of this data, they accounted for 1/3 of all Black graduates and 1/4 of all Latino graduates. While there are numerous factors that contribute to these graduation rates, one of the issues is the lack of representation in the music education world. White students have so many role models to identify with as they learn, from their directors to the composers whose music they're playing. It's just as important to these minority students that they have the role models as they continue in their music education. So why is this data important? Maria Mendonça, who is a professor of music and anthropology at Kenyon College, was the second person I reached out to during my research process. This is largely due to her work in the field of ethnomusicology, and her interview proved that I definitely found the right person to talk to. In addition to the clip I am about to play, Maria shared with me the following quote: "Learning about different music is not separate from learning about different cultures, and it can only help us get excited about the nuance and variety of the human experience." This line has really shaped the way in which I've gone about this project. The next slide contains an audio clip of her speaking to the importance of representation in the students' music education.
One student mentioned about, this is a long time ago, about Filipino jazz, because they just discovered that their relative was a really well-known Filipino jazz musician. They had no idea about this and wanted to look further.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like the music you grew up with and that matters to you, to see it represented in a kind of public arena of some sort, whether that's in the classroom, whether that's on TV, it can mean so much. It's kind of like a validation of being present. I don't know, I'm not putting this very well, but I think it's really important.
I remember hearing a song in my music theory class earlier this fall that I loved as a kid. Of course, I had no idea that it contained a secondary diminished chord, but just making the connection to all the experience that I associated with that song really allowed me to connect more with the example that was being provided, even though what I was being taught was the same as what it was before. Whether this means playing an example from a well-known movie, for me it'd be a John Williams piece from Star Wars, or asking students for a favorite song and connecting it to something that you're teaching in the classroom, the simple identification with this piece of music does really serve as a validation of existence, as Maria put it. So now that you've heard about the importance, how can this be implemented into the classroom? This may seem slightly obvious, but you do have to be willing to put in the effort. No one is saying that this is going to be easy, but your effort must be intentional if you're truly committed to the cause. The resources that are available are immense, and I will share some that I found later. But simply spending 15 minutes on your favorite search engine may seem like a lot, but it is truly rewarding if you're willing to put in the time. This is kind of along the same vein, but take time to look for music from diverse composers. Out of curiosity, earlier this week, I put in the key terms African and Spanish into a search bar of a fairly large music publisher, and it took me an embarrassingly long amount of time to find both of these searches before I found a piece that was not by a white composer. Well, there's nothing wrong in both supporting these artists and underrepresented composers. It must be intentional if you truly wish to have that representation. Next, use available resources. Like I said, utilizing the unlimited access we have to the internet today can only be super duper helpful. After only 10 minutes of searching on Google, I found the following organizations. First is Music by Black Composers. This is a project by the Rachel Barton Pine Foundation committed to making music by Black composers more accessible. Rather than me reading off a mission statement, here's a promotional video that can be found on their website.
The goal of the MBC project is to spread awareness of Black composers and their music as broadly as possible.
So what's the name of this composer? Ignatius Sancho, that's right. Now, does anybody know anything about his life?
He was born 1729, he died 1780.
Whoa, I couldn't have even rattled that off.
He was the first to vote for the British election. When he died, he was the first Black person to be in an obituary in a newspaper.
That's right.
I think this actually opens up the world not only to African American students, but even to students who are not African American, by showing them how much broader the world of classical music actually is than they might have thought.
I'm a violinist and a composer. My name is Jessie Montgomery. I also perform. I travel around and perform on the violin with a string quartet called the Catalyst Quartet.
So my RBP Foundation started our Music by Black Composers project with the purpose of gathering as much of this music as we could, both for professional performers as well as for pedagogical purposes. My foundation has collected more than 900 works by about 350 composers from all around the world. We're very excited to have just released our timeline poster of 300 composers, our coloring book featuring the portraits and biographies of 40 composers, and our first curricular volume for violin.
Music education basically has two sort of tracks that it needs to go down. First, music needs to be a part of everyone's basic education.
So any final questions before we go?
What is an orchestra?
And then the music industry needs more participation by African American students.
Yay! All right.
When I was a kid, the first opportunity that I saw an African American on the stage of an orchestra, it made me feel that I could do this myself too. So it was so motivational and opened the door that, oh my God, this is a possibility for me.
I want to just take a second to explain a little bit about the process of composing.
What the RBP Foundation has done is opened a door to so many kids that just don't feel classical music is theirs, right? They think it as some other.
There's been a strong presence and very, very important contributions by people of African descent as performers and composers in classical music, all the way going back to the 1700s. Unfortunately, because of historic discrimination as well as other factors, a lot of the music is out of print, or maybe it's never been published in the first place and it's in manuscript. Maybe the printed edition has errors. Maybe the manuscript isn't really legible right off the music stand. So there's a lot of work to be done to get this music ready to be performed, as well as to spread awareness of what it is and where it's located. So we'll definitely have a lot of work yet ahead of us.
I think it's really important for the African American community as a musician, but also for everyone, only because it's great music, because great music is great music.
This truly represents an extraordinary contribution for our field, and I am sure that it will have a profound effect on so many young people who are studying. In fact, I really wish it would have existed when I started at just the age of 5.
So as you can tell, NBC has definitely latched on to many of the ideas that I mentioned today. And if you're interested, this would be one of many fantastic resources. So the next is Music Workshop, which was actually recommended to me by Professor Mendonça during her interview. This organization provides free lesson plans in the forms of videos for grades K through 8. They focus on one country/culture at a time, and Marie is actually getting involved with the programs to provide knowledge on her Indonesian music. Over 10,000 schools are involved currently, present in all 50 states and 49 countries. The third that I found is Challenge the Stats, which is an organization dedicated to empowering BIPOC artists. They host concerts and other events, as well as educational programs. These programs seek to inspire the next generation of artists by providing representation. According to their website, 80% of the students who attended these events saw a classical musician of color perform for the first time. They are based in Georgia, but the work they're doing is worth noting. The final resource I'm going to suggest is And We Were Heard. I was very excited when I found this website because they're pretty much doing the exact kind of thing that I was interested in. And We Were Heard is a website that provides recordings of pieces by underrepresented composers. Additionally, if one of these composers would like their piece played, they can submit it to be matched with an ensemble. And additionally, ensembles can sign up to play these pieces and have them recorded on the website. Instead of looking for bigger music publishers' websites for pieces, this would be a great place to search for some music. They have information about the piece, the composer, the grade of the piece. I believe they have grades 1 through 6 currently, and links to recordings if they exist. Currently, this includes music for bands and orchestras, and I believe choral music is coming soon. The video that is included on the slide is the first recording on the website under wind ensembles. It's a grade 4 piece, as you can see on the left, and the recording was done by the Slippery Rock University Wind Ensemble. I won't play the whole piece because it's almost 6 minutes long, but I do want to give you a taste. It was really fun for me to peruse this website, and hopefully it can also be a resource for others to find some new music by these underrepresented composers. These 4 examples took me approximately 10 minutes to find after a quick Google search. And this is only scratching the surface of the immense number of organizations that are out there who have dedicated themselves to the cause. So if you have a spare moment, I encourage you to take the time to look for them and support them. My last suggestion is to reach out and involve others and build those connections. Here's a brief clip from Maria's interview.
So, there's a kind of official as well as a local route. And I think the two could probably work together in really interesting ways. Imagine you were performing, I don't know, with your local choir, a particular piece from a community. And then you had a community member get up and explain to everyone, either at a rehearsal or even at a performance, why that piece of music is important. Wouldn't that be extraordinary for the audience and for the people performing?
Throughout her interview, Maria talked about reaching out to the communities that you want to build connections with. Once or twice saying something along the lines of, listen widely, and if there's something that you like, try to contact the musicians involved. Follow them on social media, ask them about their music, and one of my favorite lines, building connections is free. I was even thinking about this as I wrapped up this project. I've managed to have 2 extremely productive conversations with professors at major universities, and I'm only a 17-year-old senior in high school. This was all possible because I sent them an email and took initiative. It'd be absolutely amazing, both as a performer and an audience member, to both hear a piece, say, from a Puerto Rican community, as Maria used in her example, and then to hear someone speaking about why this piece or song is important to them and what experience they associate with it. In this way, you're not only providing representation, but also encouraging your students to be increasingly open-minded as they grow, both as musicians and people. As we wrap up, I would now like to open the floor for any questions or comments. And if there are none, that is also all right. Okay, perfect. Finally, it'd be very helpful in my reflection of this process if you would take the time to fill out a brief survey. It's only 8 questions long, and it should take no more than 5 minutes to complete. I'll give a second to make sure the QR code works, and I believe it should also be in the chat. Thank you all so much for attending my presentation. I'd also like to thank Thomas Verrier and Maria Mendonça for sharing their time and wisdom in order to help me put this presentation together, and to my Global Scholars advisors, Kendra Polito, for helping me work out the logistics of this project. Thank you all for taking time out of your Sunday afternoon to support me in my efforts. I hope it was worthwhile.